Today's episode of Retailer Podium is sponsored by Brunel Commercial Interiors, one of Western Canada's largest architectural, millwork, metals, and retail fixtures manufacturers, building commitment one client at a time since 1964. Visit Brunel, BRUNEL.ca for more details. Over to you, Luke.
Thank you, Melissa. Well, everybody, welcome today to a great day because we have, I think, a very special guest, which I've known Arthur gentleman for a number of years, and I've always been a big fan of him. And so we have Mr. Brian Dyck, who's going to talk about Goodlife. So I guess, Brian, let's start this off by asking you to tell a bit of history about the company, about yourself.
Will do. Luke, first of all, Melissa, thank you very much for the opportunity today. I really do appreciate it, honestly. Goodlife story, which is a very long one, very short, or short as I possibly can. David Patchell Evans, affectionately known as Patch, was in a motorcycle accident, 19 years old. Through his intense rehab, he noticed a huge gap in fitness offerings. This was in London, Ontario. He was attending a small gym in addition to maintaining his rehab regimen, and found out the gym he was attending was for sale. So there was his chance to make fitness better. And over a 12-pack, the night he found out it was for sale, he bought it and opened the club the next morning as the owner. That club in London, Ontario, opened 43 years ago, and it was 2,500 feet. So that's as brief as I could possibly make it. My history starts with Goodlife about 8 years ago when I made the move. Goodlife was one of my accounts in my previous life at Smart Centers. I completed about a dozen deals with Patch and his team over the years. I was certainly and still am a deal junkie, but I was not really a fitness fanatic by any means. Through dealing and doing business with the company, I got to know the company really well, including Patch and all their senior leaders. Their passion for the business was and still is immeasurable. They're morally responsible. They're a fun group of people. They work hard. They play hard. All these things are important to me, were important to me, are important to me. And even with over 12,000 employees, they remain entrepreneurial and innovative, and they're constantly evolving. All those factors played in my decision to come over here 8 years ago.
So, Brian, let's talk a bit about Goodlife across the country, the locations, and what are your typical space requirements?
Well, Luke, if you don't mind, I want to get into the space requirements a little bit later, if that's okay. To give everyone overview, this was as of June 30, 199 Goodlife clubs operating across the country. We have 101 Fit for Less clubs operating. We have 67 Econo Fitness clubs operating in Quebec. And we have another 12 currently under construction, which should all open by end of Q1 2023.
So without revealing state secrets, can you share your expansion strategy? How do you go about site selection, and what are the smaller, what's a small market can you do, and urban versus suburban locations? What are your thoughts on those?
Right now, the health of the existing business is the absolute priority. We obviously took a big hit during the pandemic, to say the least, and it will take a bit of time to get back to or close to pre-pandemic membership levels, but happy to report that everything is certainly moving in the right direction. Regarding our approach to expansion, I think one word sums it up right now, and that word is steady. The ravenous pace that we had for years leading up to the pandemic will slow somewhat in the near term, as again, the main focus remains on the current business. We're also in the latter stages of catching up on the backlog of clubs that were either under construction at the time the pandemic hit, or we had, possession dates coming in 2020 or 2021. And that's proving to take a little more time with lack of resources, labor, materials, all the COVID effects. So we're going to slow down just a little bit. But with that said, we are looking for opportunities for both Goodlife and Fit for Less. The trade area is difficult to answer. Both brands look at things a little bit differently. I mean, with Fit for Less, we're looking at trade areas, north of 50,000 people. Goodlife, we can probably be a little more aggressive and be north of 35 or 40,000 people, depending on the demographic cross section. Our trade areas are generally revolving around drive times to a potential location. Unlike retail, which looks at 100% of the trade area, with less than 20% of people generally working out, we need to make sure that we're close to those driveways, and that drive time is critical for us. People will only travel so long to work out. Our most important criteria, is the dot on the map, of course, and the usual requirements of good access, parking, and signage. I don't tend to dwell on co-tenants. The trip to go work out is a much different trip from a shopping trip, but having certain co-tenants certainly doesn't hurt. I call them the 4 food groups. Having a grocery store, a liquor, a beer store, bank, and a pharmacy will always help the brand awareness and stimulate gravity to our location. But I'm happy to be on my own at the same time. But being in a larger, well-anchored center is always going to be icing on the cake. We talk about urban, which is a very scary word right now, especially where office is a large part of the equation. On the other hand, there's so much residential intensification happening in urban and in traditionally suburban markets now. There's certainly a bit of a shift in how we can approach certain circumstances with developers, integrating integrating into larger scaled residential projects is a new reality and becoming an obvious need, for both sides. What we all know is typical suburban retail development is changing, not all good and not all bad, but it's forcing us to, explore more creative ways, to use space. Downtown urban is an entirely different story. I don't think anyone really knows when the utilization of office space will peak again. We are being very careful in that regard.
So then let's talk about the industry and what are the trends in the fitness industry, especially with post-pandemic, and has the pandemic helped accelerate some concepts? And anecdotally, it seems like personal training and small group fitness are getting more and more popular. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, there's definitely been a shift, and the pandemic did accelerate, what may have already been changing. Hard to say. What we're seeing now, though, is an absolute desire of our members for personalization of their fitness experience and a variety in fitness within that personalization. That's become abundantly clear. And although subscription to our group fitness offerings is improving every day, you're exactly right, Luke. I mean, personal training is really strong right now. I mean, numbers we haven't seen for a long time, but I think that's just getting back to normal from the pandemic. And I think that will level out over time. But right now it's very clear that people want that personal training. But at the same time, they also want to be social and they want that network, and group fitness gives them that in their fitness experience. They want a balance between personal and being part of a group. And to your point regarding the intrigue in small group fitness experiences, we've actually developed 2 new banners over the pandemic. One pandemic. In 2019, we acquired a concept from Louisiana called Regimen Fitness, and it's a high intensity interval training concept. Not not yet in standalone locations, but by the end of the year, we'll have 6 to 8 Regimen Fitness in club locations in various markets across the country. And just last year, Patch teamed up with George Foreman #3 to form Craft Boxing. And it's obviously a boxing focused high intensity interval training concept. And we'll have 2 to 3 of those in club by the end of the year as well. So, you know, we're looking at an expanded, well-rounded offering. Everyone's different, of course, but there's a personalization, there's the group component, and there's a specialized workout, all playing together.
But then let's talk about the facility. So with all this happening, are there any notable changes that Goodlife has implemented in its facilities, either in all or just in new locations, and why? And if, as a follow-up, such as different are there different square footages, and are you going to be changing that or making other kinds of changes to the facilities?
Well, I mean, it's not an easy one to answer. Our business is very capital intensive, given the amount of wear and tear that we put through the club, and a large amount of wet areas with the change room, showers, saunas, etc. And the fact that we operate 24 hours a day in a majority of our locations. As such, our CapEx program takes into account, obviously, the repair and maintenance needs, but we also have to be sensitive to the trends. And when we're spending money, we need to spend it where it counts. We don't want to refresh the same club, the same layout, you know, the same amenities. We want to be integrating, as an example, like we have with Craft Boxing and with Regimen Fitness. We want to be sensitive to any shift there might be, to more cardio or to less cardio. Things are always shifting, and they're always shifting in certain markets more than other markets. So we have to really watch what's happening in each particular market at the same time. The fitness offerings and amenities are constantly evolving. We have seen our space requirements shift in the last number of years. When I joined the team 8 years ago, a typical Goodlife was about 25,000 feet, and a typical Fit for Less at the time was about 10 to 12,000 feet. We're now seeing the need for larger Goodlife clubs, and we're looking at 40,000 feet plus for our Goodlife clubs going forward. And our Fit for Less clubs, we're now focused on 15 to 20,000 feet. So both are growing. The offerings are simply expanding. I mean, more strength training in certain markets, turf areas are expanding, and the need for turf areas is certainly there. Larger stretching areas, recovery rooms, integrating yoga, and in some cases hot yoga as well. Trying to integrate into the space meditation rooms, and again, those other boutique offerings for in-club locations. We're also building larger locker rooms. I mean, it's all fitness, it's no fluff, but it's constantly evolving.
Wow. So here's a good one for you. Actually, it could be maybe a tough one, so a little curve here. But what would be the one most proud thing? What's one thing that you are the most proud of, and how you've navigated the past 3 years?
That's actually an easy one, Luke. I'm very proud of our relationships with our landlords. We had immeasurable assistance and support since March 16th, 2020, the day we closed down. I believe we have a good reputation out there amongst the landlords, and to me, this became abundantly clear during the pandemic. I mean, we would potentially be in a very different place without the support of our landlords. So we take great pride in that.
Thank you. Well, you know, one thing I have to add to that is one of the biggest elements of that communication is that you didn't hide. You picked up the phone and you called everybody and said, hey, this is what's happening. That's probably a credit to your organization, because others didn't do that, whereas you were at the forefront and said, look, I got a problem, we need to talk. So credit to you and your team on that.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay, if you were asked to give advice to other business owners on how they could be more resilient whether in the fitness industry or in general, what would be one or two pieces of advice?
Well, I mean, keep in mind that I'm a real estate guy in a fitness world over here, but I would say to other business owners that you need to be very aware of the trends. You need to identify the trends early. You need to try and be a leader in your category, and not just a follower. I think you need, as a business owner, you need to be new every day. You need to be innovative, and you need to be individual. Don't follow the pack. Number two, and this kind of goes back to your last question, somewhat, Luke. I think strong relationships, strong key relationships. I think every business owner needs to work hard at key relationships with their employees, with their vendors, with their landlords, with their financial partners. I hate to say it, but people like to be judgmental. They want to have an opinion. Don't give your key relationships an easy out. Keep them strong and work hard at keeping those relationships up front and strong.
Those are great advices. So let me close this off with one last question, and it's two-pronged. As someone who is intimately tapped into the fitness industry, where do you see the future of fitness going, and what is just around the corner that we should be getting excited about?
Well, I think the main theme here is that there hasn't been a time in our history where health and well-being is more important. People are placing a much higher value on their health and fitness levels post-pandemic, than we've ever seen in our industry. I spoke about this a little bit earlier, but with that, people desire high levels of personalization, and they want a huge variety to choose from. That's why we see personal training, and again, that personalization through those offerings of very focused boutiques, and not just ours. There's many boutique offerings out there. A big trend, and I think what's going to become bigger and bigger out there as well is how the mind is as important as the body. In our clubs, and you'll see them in the newer clubs, and you'll see them in our clubs as we renovate down the road. Many more meditation spaces and quiet spaces, so people can have their own personal mental health time. That's a huge component and growing vastly. Another one is recovery being as important as the workout itself. You'll see in our clubs dedicated recovery rooms with stretching areas and compression equipment and massage equipment and rollers and various pieces to aid in the recovery. My kids, who are all gym rats, will actually go to the gym the next day strictly for a recovery day. It's becoming very big. The proliferation of specialized fitness boutique offerings in our segment has exploded in recent years, which I think has been relatively obvious, which is why we, as in our case, we were looking for some great opportunities to get into that arena, with regimen and craft boxing. But I think in our case, what you're going to see, plain and simply, in the future, Luke, is you're going to see us getting a little bit bigger, a little more spacious in our clubs, and we're going to have expanded offerings, all those elements that I've touched on today, and that will be across all of our banners.
So, Brian, I wanted to ask you, for people who are listening to this and those who are looking to listen to the recording after, if they wanted to talk to your organization for opportunities, do they call you, or you have a network of brokers across the country? what's the best way to reach out to you and talk about opportunities?
I do have a small network of brokers, across the country, a team of 8. But I think the easiest way is just to start with me. Honestly, feel free to contact me directly, and then we can get the right team member involved depending on where we are in the country.
Great. Well, we're actually right on time. That's fantastic. So, Brian, I'd like to thank you very much on behalf of the CREC team and the participants. And at this time, I'd like to hand it over to Melissa for the closing.
Thank you. Thank you, Brian. We greatly appreciate your time and willingness to share your knowledge. Thank you, Luke, for hosting. And on behalf of Brunel Construction Commercial Interiors, one of Western Canada's largest architectural millwork, metals, and retail fixtures manufacturers, this will be our last CREC Talk Shop for the summer. We are back in September, so stay tuned for those details. And we will have this recording up on our YouTube page shortly. Thanks a lot, everyone. Have a great summer.
Thank you, everyone.